talk to us a little bit about, you know, how you're seeing biomimicry or bioinspiration and fractals start to be deployed in the built environment and in architecture.
Yeah. So, it's an amazing opportunity, firstly. So, as we've seen, if we look at where we are right now, so the United States spends about $300 billion on stress related illnesses every year. The number of people reporting that they're feeling stressed and that they think that it's associated with spending too much time in the indoor environment is going up. And I think what people don't really yet understand is some of the really negative consequences of being stressed. So when we all report being stressed, it's getting to a level where, when you look at the stress levels, it can impact your body in many, many different ways, not just psychological from mood swings, but in terms of what's going on in your gut and, how robust it is to, kind of infections and whatever, to even how brittle your bones are can be affected by stress. And certainly, your blood pressure and things like that are affected. So, stress has very negative consequences for your body if you let it go out of control. So, how do we solve this problem? So, one is that you could try a pharmaceutical approach to it, but that really is an unnatural quick fix to it. Coming back to the idea of, well, why is stress getting out of control? And, we mentioned it earlier that our ancestors would get stressed like us. They do tasks that get stressed, but then they would then go and recuperate, get restored by nature's fractals. So what's happening is that we're not getting restored. Now, if you wander into a building, and again, think about the opportunities, is that if you add up the amount of volume of indoor space, it adds up to like the whole volume of Maryland. It's ridiculous. So we have this huge space in America that at the moment is horribly Euclidean, that we do not want deep down, we do not want to be in that environment. And so there's a great opportunity to take all of that space and convert it into a space that we do want to live in. And so that's where I'm working with various companies. So, um, different companies specialize in different things. So we're working with Mohawk, who's the sort of flooring manufacturer. We're working with a great company called Fact Design. They're doing noise reducing ceilings. We're going to be working with Momentum, who are doing wallpapering. So the idea is that we have this multiple approach with many different companies designing these things, and it's a beautiful sort of process that I can talk about the artistic process, because I'm collaborating with two Austrian designers who have a company called 13 and 9 Design. So they are we talk about it as being the design police and the fractal police. And so basically, we're both checking in with each other because the designs are only as good as the weakest link. So we have to make sure everything works. So basically, from my side, we're using these computer programs to generate the patterns. And then they look at them and that they change them based on their artistic views. And then they send it back to me. And then we use programs to analyze them and check that what they've done has enhanced the fractal character rather than reduced it. So often, because they're in Europe, we've worked 24 hours round the clock in that process. But basically, we're installing them now the idea, the target is big spaces like hotels, airports, banks, and often high stress places. They're at our university and at other universities, public libraries. So places where, a lot of people are going to be spending their time.
And so Pollock's work, you were describing it a little bit, but he would basically, kind of drop paint onto, a canvas and it would splatter. So is that, am I getting that right? And so the gravity that's pulling that paint down, and then it disperses in a fractal way, even though it's not, even or, predetermined.
Yeah, and that's it really. When I published this work, a whole it became really well known at the time, and a lot of magazines would have this title: "Why Jackson Pollock was an amazing mathematician," but he wasn't. He painted intuitively, and so we introduced the term fractal expressionism to distinguish the mathematical stuff, where you carefully intellectually develop an equation. And Pollock wasn't doing that. He was using his intuition. And what he was actually doing in using his body is that, one of the sort of secrets about Jackson Pollock is that when you read, uh, kind of magazine articles about Pollock, they all talk about how graceful he was. He was almost like these words talk about how he was like a ballet dancer, moving across the canvas. He wasn't. He was notoriously clumsy and he had very bad balance.
Good for
But
knocking paint over.
almost. And what we realized is, when you lean over and you go off balance and your body starts to sway, when you analyze that, the motion is fractal. So it's got big sways mixed in with smaller and smaller sways. And so what Pollock was doing was deliberately going off balance. And because he was ill balanced, it emphasized this motion.
Mm.
And then as he poured paint, so he was moving around in this very fractal like motion because he triggered this balance thing. And then he was pouring paint. And so the canvas was kind of capturing that balance motion. But it's quite an amazing thing, because people think, oh, that's got to be easy to paint that way. But, the challenge is if you tell somebody to go and paint like Pollock, then they find out how difficult it is because it's, you can't predetermine anything and you can't correct for anything. It's very much action art, it's capturing that happening. And it's amazing because he's painting in three-dimensional space and can somehow know how that condenses onto the two-dimensional canvas. So it really, really is quite an amazing technique. But our computer showed that he did. He managed to distill that essence of nature onto canvas in a very direct way that no other artist had really done so beautifully.
Fascinating. Well, I'm picturing, as you're describing a fractal building, I'm picturing a tree and,
Yeah.
picturing a building that would be, like a tree branch that splinters out and has, different wings, different branches of a building. So just to go back to products that you're working on and thinking about, we just are completing a building and we used, thanks to you, fractal carpeting
Right.
in certain areas of that building. But if I'm, living in a house or an apartment, what are there products out there that you would recommend, or ways that we can bring fractals into our home environments?
Yeah, so you can buy, like I say, I don't sell them myself, but these tiles of. So one of the big, I think, amazing things about working with Mohawk, if we can concentrate on carpets for the moment, is that we did the designs, but one of the amazing things about their product is that they make their carpets from recycled bottles. And then, they've got this water theme going on. So they donate some of their profits to cleaning up rivers around the countries. And they make from these fibers, they make them incredibly robust so that they don't wear out quickly. But one of the things that I was very impressed with is that when we were designing these patterns, We were designing these big patterns thinking that they were going to be for, kind of rolled out carpet. And then they came to us quite late in the design and they said, we really want to make these carpets cheaper so that they're more accessible to people and to lots of different spaces. So they said, what we want to do is we want to deliver them as tiles. We want to cut them up in 4x4 tiles so that then whoever buys them can put them in whatever environment, whether it's someone's living room or whether it's the foyer of the hotel. And so that really appealed to me because I wanted to have this big impact where anybody could buy these things. But what it meant for our design is that we had to show that no matter, as that pattern was cut up into these 4x4 pieces, that it would work no matter how they were reassembled. So we had to show that if you cut them up and just randomly reassembled them, it would still preserve that fractal character. So that was quite a challenge, but they do. So that means then that when you get a box of these Mohawk squares, you don't have to think about, do I have to put this one over here or this one over here? You can just install them based on whatever, the way that you think it looks best. And that fractal character will still come through. So, like I said, they're getting more and more prevalent. I've got them in my living room.